Hello, my wonderful festival volunteers, organizers, administrators, people who subscribe to Music Festival Suite. Want to thank you again for allowing me to join you on that journey this year. It's now time for us to look a little bit more towards a wrap up for the festival season, namely because most year festivals have indeed already wrapped up and are looking towards provincial festivals, if anything else, as well. So now's a good time. Now's a good time for me to check in and go with a kind of a state of the system address, as it were. We're going to talk a little bit about what happened in 2024 and where we're moving forward to in 2025. For those of you who haven't seen this face before, my name is Joel Windsor, and I run Windy J Music. And Windy J Music took over ownership of Music Festival Suite back in July of 2023. And that's kind of where our story is going to start on this video today. The state of the system is going to start with the fact that we had new ownership, and of course, excitement that comes with that, but also a couple of challenges along the way too. And what that means for us going in the future is that we're going to refine what we already have. We're going to refine the way we deliver it, and we're going to refine the way that we meet our philosophy of what our business is supposed to do in the first place. So it's a lot of refinement that's going to be happening over the course of this coming festival season of 2025. So, as I said, new ownership took over in July of 2023, and while there was many exciting things, and we had some fantastic plans, including implementing a syllabus feature as well as many other features, some of those plans got a little bit side railed, honestly, particularly because we had some changes that we simply were not expecting at all. One of those changes being that our servers simply weren't big enough. And because they weren't big enough and fast enough for that matter, we had to move everything over from one server to another. And that happened thankfully a little early, but server changes are not exactly simple processes to go through. So, but there is some good news that goes with that. Our server is now 12 times the size it was at this time last year. Our server is 16 times as fast as it was at this time last year. But there were some other challenges too, such as the old server used to use an old, antiquated, no longer supported way of producing PDFs. So when we moved to the new server, well, we had to start from scratch on that. And there are a lot of PDFs and a lot of customizations that we need to be able to make happen when we allow you to create PDFs using Music Festival Suite. Now, the good news that goes with that, of course, is that the old templates that we were able to do were a little bit limited in their customization properties. Now, our new PDFs are far more customizable. You can change colors, you can change text and font, you can change the layout even to a certain extent, including the margins, which you couldn't do on the old system. So, while we had to be forced into upgrading our PDF system, the forced upgrade meant that we could do a lot more with it too, and now you guys can do a lot more with it as well. One of the other challenges we had this year had to do with PayPal. And PayPal gave us some challenges throughout the year. The first big challenge that we had from PayPal was that they changed a little bit of how their integration worked, and it broke how things worked with Music Festival Suite at a key time for some of our festivals, right before Christmas for that matter too, where PayPal suddenly was not accepting payments or reporting payments the way they were supposed to be. So that made some pretty big challenges, but those challenges were exasperated later on in the year when PayPal was demanding privacy information of participants, not of the account owners, not of the festivals themselves, but privacy information of participants who were under the age of majority. And we felt that that was not appropriate, nor was it even necessary, to be perfectly honest. And so that, coupled with a number of other issues that PayPal has been causing for festival organizers, led to us signaling to you earlier this year that we were going to be deprecating support for PayPal. What does that mean for festivals? This is actually a really good time. If you haven't already started working towards moving to Stripe, which is the main way, the only way for that matter, that Music Festival Suite is going to be processing payments going forward, then you need to make that move to Stripe pretty soon, I would suggest, because the sooner you've got that set up, the less stress there will be for you in the 2025 festival season. And there are a couple of extra documents that you're going to need. You do not need to provide as much detail or as much information as PayPal demanded. PayPal used to demand that festival organizers have one person provide a social insurance number. Stripe doesn't do that. But what Stripe does need to do is prove that your organization does in fact actually exist. And so the way they do that is by having usually two sets of documents, is what I've been told that many people have to deal with. One of them being your constitution or your bylaws or whatever it is for your organization. And then the other one is a motion on the books that says you're going to use Stripe. So at your next, maybe even your year-end meeting, I recommend that you as an organization, have somebody make the motion to move to Stripe so that your credit card processing through Music Festival Suite will be more effective. For that matter, Stripe also allows your participants to pay not just by credit card, but also by Google Pay, Apple Wallet, or sorry, Google Wallet, the digital wallets. I always get that mixed up. But you're going to be able to use your digital wallets, or your participants will use digital wallets. And it's possible that in the future, Stripe will also enable us to use debit or Interac e-transfer to a certain extent as well. So that's why we're sticking to Stripe, because they are investigating doing that for us too, which will be of a great benefit to many of our festivals. The other big change that happened was a kind of a behind-the-scenes change this year. Meant that we had to do some adjustments to our to our mass email system. So when you send an email to a lot of people through Music Festival Suite, we are basically a mass emailer or a bulk emailer, and we need to meet some requirements as set out by the industry. And Google and Yahoo increased some of their demands. Now, that wasn't a major issue for us on Music Festival Suite, as we were already meeting the vast majority of those demands, but it did allow us to do some refinement to how our emails were being processed. And it gave us a chance to actually communicate with you about how to make sure that we keep our sender reputation really, really high. Because even if Regina sends a music festival, an email using Music Festival Suite and St. John's, it does not actually give a sender reputation to just Regina or just St. John's. It affects the entirety of Music Festival Suite because you're using our system. Now, the good news is, before these increase in demands were in place, we already had a very high and very reputable, very strong reputation amongst the industry of email service providers. It's even higher now that this Google and Yahoo increase of demands has been met by Music Festival Suite and actually exceeded to a certain extent as well. So while that is important to us and why we need to make that change, all of these three things, the server size, the PayPal, and the emails, meant that we had to sideline some of our original plans for this for the 2024 festival season. So that was a bit of a challenge and a little bit of a pivot, and unfortunately, it took a lot of energy from where we were going. So now we get to redouble our efforts a little bit towards that end, or rather, actually shift, because all of our wonderful, well-laid plans, being foisted as they were, helped us realize that maybe we should go back to our philosophy of what our business actually is. And so that's where we get to review that. So just so you are aware of why I even bothered with Music Festival Suite in the first place. The reason why I got involved in this business is because I have a value. I highly value the music festival experience for young and developing musicians. I'm volunteer as much as I possibly can, get my students into the festivals as often as I possibly can. The experiences they get through the events that you organizers put together is invaluable. It's not something that can be copied in the classroom or in the studio. It's something that they can only get through a performing experience such as what you provide. So I wanted to help enable that by way of making software that was going to make it easier for volunteers to make those events happen. So my focus is on the volunteers. I want you guys, volunteers, organizers, administrators, to have the best experience possible in accepting registrations, organizing your schedule, printing certificates, etc., so that when you are actually creating your event, you're creating a fantastic event for your community. So that's our focus. The best way to help festivals succeed is to help you the volunteers. And so now we have a little bit of a look, a little bit of a reflection as to what that actually means for us. So some of the ways that we help our volunteers is, first of all, to give you a variety of different functions in Music Festival Suite that meet all your needs, and to make those functions robust and detailed, because every festival uses certificates differently, or uses their schedule differently, or the syllabus differently. So we wanted to make sure that we met as many of those needs as we can, meaning it needs to be very robust, but it also needs to be super easy to use, because as many festivals know, not all of your volunteers are particularly computer savvy. We want this to be relatively straightforward. We also know that in using something like Music Festival Suite, it's another line on your budget. And so we wanted to try to make sure that what we do to impact your budget is reasonable. And so we also added a couple features a few years ago to Music Festival Suite that allow you to do some fundraising by way of sponsorships. Uh, and we also are thinking about what we can do to make fundraising a little bit less necessary using some of the features that we have with Music Festival Suite. The next bit, of course, is when we're talking about helping volunteers. Well, volunteers are helping participants. So we want to make sure that the volunteers can either A, not have to help the participants as much, or it's really easy for you to help the participants. And so one way to do that is to make it easier for your participants to even use Music Festival Suite. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to enable that in 2025. And then, of course, more importantly, especially after the last few years of tumultuousness that we've had, we want to be able to encourage your festival to grow. However that growth may be, more venues, more disciplines offered, or just simply more registrations. Whatever that method happens to be, we want to enable that growth through our system in the way that we design it as well. So these are our main thrust, our philosophy of what we're going to be doing for Music Festival Suite, which kind of leads us to what we've chosen to focus on in 2025. So these are the three main principles of what we're going to be doing as we move forward into 2025. First of all of the main features that we now have in Music Festival Suite, no significant changes to them. We want those main features to be comfortable. We want you to be familiar with them, and we want you to be able to use them with confidence. And so that means that we should probably stop doing some of those changes that were honestly forced on us because of all of the upgrades and changes we had to do with the new ownership. We also want to make it easier for you and for your participants to get their way through the site, to find where they can put their registrations, find their schedules, find their linked profiles, and even make those children's and groups profiles. We wanted to make that all a whole lot easier for everybody. Our current navigation it's okay, but there is better, and that is what we're looking towards doing. And then the last bit is we're really interested in helping you as volunteers and organizers save time, but also your organizations, we want to help them save money as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the principles of what we're doing being built into our design process in order to enable these three things. So we'll talk about the first one. We're actually going to go down through each of our changes one at a time here. So the first big one, the one that's kind of important and something I've already been working on and are still working on, honestly, is an improvement to our user interface for your participants. I said I wanted to make it easier for your participants to use the system, and so here we go. So what we're doing is, first of all, we're going to make it easier for people to make profiles. We're going to make it easier for people to make profiles for their children and for their groups, and even be able to see and edit their profiles and do the photo release forms. We want to make it all way easier to do all of those things. We want it to be easier for them to find their registrations, their schedule, everything. We want to make it so that it's at least 2 clicks less than it currently is. That's kind of the number I've been having in my head, is at least 2 clicks less to find what you need to find. And that even includes when you forget your password. So here we go. This is we've already started in on this, and part of that, I'm going to do a quick little demonstration for that right here. So I'm using St. Albert Rotary Music Festival, and what you'll see here in St. Albert Rotary Music Festival this is the administrative portal, and on the bottom you can see a number of buttons here. There's a new button down here I'm going to show you, but before I do that, I'm going to remind you a little bit about what the current user interface looks like. That if I were to, let's see here, if I click in here, then I should be able to log in, show me my regular profile as I already know. There's a number of large buttons that allows me to do certain things here, but if I want to go and have a look at my registrations, I have to click into a menu. I have to click into link profiles if I want to see any of my groups or my children. And then I have to click again a whole bunch of times before I can even see my son Nathaniel. And so that is an awful lot of clicks that we're working through, and frankly, we've learned that the more clicks there are, the less likely participants are going to do it. They're just going to end up sending you an email saying, how do I do this? So let's take away some of those clicks. And so I'm going to go back in time here a little bit, and I'm going to use that new sneak peek button that's on the bottom right hand corner. And if you are a lead administrator, you can see this button in your administrative portal, so you can get a little bit of a hint as to what the profile, the new interface, is going to look like. This is also only a sneak peek, meaning it's a work in progress. Much of it already works and has been tested. However, it is still a work in progress. One of the first things that we are changing is that your usernames for your participants, including yourselves, they always start with that ENT and then a number of digits afterwards. We have actually updated that such that they do not need to be forced into keeping that same ID. If they want to change their username, they can certainly do so now. So people who have a difficult time remembering the multiple usernames they have for different sites will not have to remember as much anymore. They can now choose a username that is familiar to them and log in using that instead. Right now I haven't changed mine, so I am going to keep my username going, and I'm going to log in. You can see that the interface for doing this is much more modern, much more. I'm actually zoomed in a little bit, so it looks a little bigger than it needs to be, but this is actually the size that would normally appear on the screen. And it is much more modern and much more familiar, as many other sites are using a very similar layout for their login screens. There's also a place where if they haven't created a profile yet, it's a quick and easy "don't have a profile yet" button. They can start creating there, and it takes up it keeps it so it's nice and simple for your users to experience. As they log in, they will see their profile a little bit more with a lot more information on the screen than was there previously. One of the first things that we've done, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit to it here for you, is we've added a section on the left-hand side that has the notifications they could possibly see. So right now there's a schedule available. So if they were to click on that, they would be able to see their registrations. They can see with great big red things that they have something that they have to address, including either a photo consent is expired, or they have a payment owing, or they have a support ticket that's been updated, something along those lines. Those kinds of notifications will appear here. Registration period being open would be a notification that would appear here. All sorts of different notifications that will let them know here's something that you have to take care of right now. Also, a quick little glance as to the schedule or the important dates that are there, relevant to the festival. And then again, as I mentioned earlier on, now I am zoomed in quite a ways, but you can easily find all of your linked profiles directly on this left-hand window. For example, you can see my children here. You can view the profile. You do not actually have to click into their profile and open it up in another screen so that you can edit your child's profile now. You can just edit directly inside your own profile as a parent now. Or if you're a teacher and you're working with groups, you can do the same thing with your groups. And it is immediately opened up in the entire screen, in the main body part of the screen, I should say. And so very easily updated here. You'll also see that the manner of attaching parents and teachers to a person is actually a little bit more clearly done. You don't have to worry about remembering the comma or anything like that. It makes it a lot easier for people to be able to do all of the things they need to, including changing usernames, passwords, email addresses, sharing their profiles, and of course the photo consent forms as well. All of that much easier. Now again, I am zoomed in a little bit, so I'll zoom it out a little bit so you can see a little bit more of exactly the kind of layout it would be. There is easy access buttons across the top to the main important points of your profile. And if you want to get into some of the more deeper parts, there is a sub-menu available, including how to log out. And even for some of the details of the festival, if people were to click on your festival's logo, they would be able to see quick links towards websites, schedule information, contact information. And one other thing that can also appear in here will be the emails that you send out to your users. Much like you are able to find all the emails that I've sent to you in the past, your users will now also be able to see all the emails that you've sent to them in the past as well. So trying to make it so it's easier for people to communicate and far fewer clicks to do all the things. You notice that I was just doing a lot of clicking just to show you around, but when it comes to editing a profile or viewing a profile, it's simply one click now to be able to find what you need to find and do what you need to do. That's what we wanted to have happen in our user interface. So that's a big change for us, and we're excited about what that means for you guys as well. And that's one that's in progress right now, and if you have any pieces of feedback you'd like to provide on that, we'll happily accept that too. The next big thing that we're going to talk about for changes to in 2025 is more improved financial reporting. So you already have a treasurer's report. One challenge right now is that it's not even where you expect it to be, so we have made a new screen for that. And in addition to that, because of Stripe and the way that we can integrate with Stripe, we're able to actually do a lot more detailed reporting for you than we ever were with PayPal. And so I'll also give you a quick little example of how that looks right here as well, as I have opened up a fake, my sample Music Festival Suite thing. So it's totally a fake festival, but one of the new buttons across the top of the screen here is a finances button, and this will appear for all of your festivals. So you'll still see the same regular treasurer's report that you're familiar with, but there's a new button in here called your transaction activity. You'll also see that there's a report of all the donations in here, all the financials in one spot, better navigation. That's what we're looking for. So inside here, you'll actually be able to see details of every single transaction and individual details for that transaction. So for example, I have a fake transaction that it was done on January 26th of this year. It's got its own transaction ID. I'll see if I can zoom back in so you guys can see that a bit better again. And if I were to click on the amount for that transaction, then I will be able to see all of the details of that transaction, what the registrations were, was there a transaction fee charged, was there a donation that they provided, and a new feature as well to go with that, discounts, that you will be able to provide individuals with discounts that they can then attach to their next payment. So for example, if a student has been given a bursary and you need to reflect that bursary in the registration fees, then you can give them a discount and it automatically will take that bursary off for them. And you can add whatever comments you want to for that discount to make it clear for your treasurer as to why that person received that discount. In addition to that, you'll also be able to add some notes on the transaction. So if you have a person who needed to change registrations or something along those lines, you can leave yourself a note there if you would like. But most importantly, you actually can see exactly the receipts either produced by MusicFestivalSuite or by Stripe. And this will actually this lovely little button here will take you directly to the receipt that your user will have received exactly as they saw it and as exactly as they will now be also emailed to them as well. Now this is a fake transaction, so if I click on this, unfortunately it's going to be like this receipt doesn't exist, but it does it will bring you to Stripe to do that. So that is pretty exciting to be able to have that much more control over the finances without the way it is right now. If you want to see any of those details, you actually have to log into Stripe yourself. Not anymore. Starting next year, you will be able to just click on a button in MusicFestivalSuite and see everything you need to see. So that's pretty exciting, improving our transactions and our reporting inside our finances side of things. And so, yeah, and the discounts, that's kind of exciting too. I'm actually really excited about how that has turned out. And that functionality is already implemented in the Crescendo edition of MusicFestivalSuite. The next thing that I'm going to show for you, and something that I'm hoping is going to be a big money saver for many festivals who choose to do this path. You don't have to use this path. As I said, all of the main features are going to simply be like maybe refined at the most, but they're not going to be changed. We're just providing this as a new feature available to you if you want, and that is to allow you some opportunities to go paperless. And I'm going to put a shout out to Regina's Festival for giving me this idea, as they have already started to try to go paperless as it is. And the way that they've been doing it is by having the adjudicator sheets placed in a Dropbox somewhere so that adjudicators can actually use Dropbox's editing tools to put their own notes directly on the adjudicator sheets. Brilliant idea, great plan. We want to make that easier. And so what we're going to do is we're going to investigate using the same technology that Dropbox actually uses for editing PDFs. I believe it's called a Prize. Or simply using Dropbox, one or the other, so that you can do exactly that directly in MusicFestivalSuite. What that means is that you may not need to ever print an adjudicator sheet ever. That rather, your adjudicators can simply put their notes directly on an iPad or a touchscreen, or even just simply using a regular computer to add their comments directly to the adjudicator sheet without ever having a printer get involved whatsoever. And then, of course, those adjudicator sheets can then be attached to the registrations so that if a person wants to see the adjudicator sheets and the adjudicator results, then all they have to do is click on a button and there shows up the exact same marks and notations and drawings even that the adjudicator put onto the sheet. That was one of the challenges we always had with the adjudicator sheets, especially after we implemented the digital version of them, is that it was hard for adjudicators to put their comments in without being really sneaky around using Adobe. Well, We're working to get rid of that so that they can, and of course they could only ever type text. Now they'll actually be able to draw on the PDFs and make it look the way they want it to look, which we're kind of excited about. So we might be able to get rid of the printers altogether. And that may also be true for your certificates, your award certificates, and maybe some other documentation you want to attach to a registration as well. So what we are able to do now that we have moved to the Crescendo database of Music Festival Suite is we can now allow you to store multiple files to every registration. You can store an adjudicator sheet, completed if necessary. You can store a certificate. You can store and maybe even an awards certificate as well. And then one more document of whatever you could possibly imagine needing to attach to a registration. It could be instructions on how to participate in a provincial festival, or details of the sponsor of the award that you gave to that student, and so that the student can also provide a thank you response to that sponsor. Anything you want to put in there, you can attach to that registration to a maximum of 4 files so that we, protect some of the server space that we have. So we're working towards allowing festivals to go paperless and hopefully save, well, time, because printers take some time, but also a little bit of money as well. So those are all big changes. And then we got one last one that I'm really excited about for you as well. And that is kind of a development that we've been looking towards doing ever since we had to create an online option with Music Festival Suite. And that is to team up with a Canadian-made solution for video conferencing that exists in browsers. It's like Zoom, but it's not Zoom. It actually exists directly in your Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or whatever the case may be, and you can actually just video conference that way. The software that it has created, that is created by a fellow by the name of Steve Seguin, the software is called Video Ninja, and we're going to implement that directly into Music Festival Suite. Now, what that means for you is that you will actually be able to have a online live venue as opposed to only in-person live venues. So instead of having a church or a concert hall or something to that effect, you would set up an online venue for people to participate in if you so chose. You don't have to, but you can choose to do this. And the good news about it is also synchronous, which means that your adjudicator can get in, your participant can get in. They don't need to know any special coding to do it. They just click a button and it automatically takes them to the right video conference. Even a festival organizer can get into that exact same thing as well. And it can happen live right at the time that you schedule for it to occur. That is really exciting. The only limitation that we still recognize exists is that, of course, an adjudicator should be able to look at the sheet music, at the score of the music that is being presented to them. And that because of copyright, we haven't gotten into that quite yet, but that doesn't mean that you can't still use these online venues, perhaps for emergent circumstances, or because you actually want to make an online venue possible to allow more people to participate in your festival. We always know that the in-person experience is always the best, because then you can get the hands-on instruction with the adjudicator, and the adjudicator can have that sheet music ready to refer back to whenever they need to. But there are some cases where the online solution is a viable solution as well. Give you my best example, many festivals on the East Coast had to deal with some weather this year. My local festival, Highwood Lions Music Festival, also had to do the same thing, and the weather prevented the musical theater adjudicator from being able to attend, and so they had to come up with a solution to allow all of their musical theater participants to still connect somehow with that adjudicator. Well, come 2025, they would have been able to reschedule everything to an online venue. The adjudicator does not have to drive. The adjudicator did not have to get a hotel room, and the venue did not have to be rebooked and potentially have some extra costs with that too. They could have used an online venue if I had that ready for them in 2024, but I will have that ready for you guys in 2025. The other thing that comes with online tools such as video conferencing is that you can now also directly in Music Festival Suite host your board meetings by way of video conference if you need to. Again, everything's better in person, but if you have to get somebody to connect from a distance, then we'll have an online venue directly in Music Festival Suite, and it doesn't cost money to have a meeting last more than 40 minutes. So that's kind of exciting. In addition to that, I will also be able to join you on some video conferencing calls if necessary. If you need video support, it'll simply be a click away, and a way you and I can simply meet up and get things done. So we're really excited about that. So the idea of the paperless stuff, the idea of the online venues, and a number of the other things that we've already implemented, the idea of those is to save some time, save some money, And part of that is that we also are going to be doing some pricing changes. So we know that you need to be saving some changes, or doing some budget changes, I should say, at the very least. So let me talk a little bit about that for a moment, because I did signal at the beginning of this festival season that we were going to be doing some subscription rate changes. The subscription rate changes involved the idea of moving to the Crescendo databases, the much more versatile databases that are actually enabling all of these changes to even happen in the first place. Um, but the challenge with that is that the pricing structure that I chose did not actually meet my philosophy. And so I have to take a little, admit to eating just a little bit of crow on that one, and saying that I chose the wrong way to move forward with my subscription rates. So I'm trying to choose a better one. And this new version that I'm going to be going with will certainly be an increase a little bit to some of the larger festivals, but it may actually be smaller festivals seeing a decrease to their subscription rates instead. And part of the reason why I'm doing that, and honestly, a number of the other changes I'm doing, is to try to make this transition in the subscription rates a little bit easier, but also equitable. A small festival should not worry about whether or not they can afford all of the features of MusicFestivalSuite. They should be able to get every feature available to them, whether they're small or whether they're a large festival. I want you to have all of the features so that you can provide the absolute best experience you possibly can for your participants. That being said, the way it sits right now, a festival that has 1,500 registrations is basically paying for MusicFestivalSuite up to now the equivalent of around 30 cents per registration, but a festival that only has 150 registrations is paying somewhere around the neighborhood of $4 per registration to use MusicFestivalSuite. And that simply isn't fair, it's not equitable, and it's not going to help those small festivals grow. And so I'm making some changes to allow those small festivals to have a little bit of a more comfortable budget line so that they can, in fact, spend time on providing that great festival experience for their much smaller number of registrations. We want you to grow. And so I'm going to be making a few changes to the subscription rates based on that principle. It's also the other reason why I'm trying to introduce some of these other cost-saving measures, like going paperless and providing you an opportunity to have online venues. So allow me to explain a little bit about what the new subscription rate, and I'm honestly a little nervous kind of sharing this with you, because anytime I suggest to somebody that we're going to increase your subscription rate, I get a little bit of nervousness. But I really do hope you understand that the reason why we're doing that is, A, I should be compensated for the amount of work that I'm putting into this, and frankly, larger festivals, you take a little bit more support because you have more registrations. But B, I'm also trying to make sure that we advance the music festival movement forward by being reasonable with our subscription rates. So here we go. I'm going to be spreading out my plan across the course of the next 3 years so that the final end plan and outline for subscription rates will be fully realized in 2027. And I'm going to ease us all into it and give you a chance to kind of gradually make your way to that over the course of 2025 and 2026. And here's 2025's pricing structure as based off of what the philosophy that I have already articulated to you. So the idea is that we're going to work with a $100 access fee to use MusicFestivalSuite, and then we're going to charge $100 for every 100 registrations, pretty close to $1 per registration. For the most part, that's the main principle behind what this pricing structure is going to be. Now, we're easing into it in 2025, and the way that we actually, I did also almost forget to mention this, but the way that we're going to figure out how many registrations we're going to choose to use to determine your subscription rate is based off of last year. So for 2025, your subscription rate will be based on the registrations you had in 2024. Fast forward a few years, in 2027, the subscription rate you pay in 2027 will be based off of what you do in 2026. So what that means is if you have a year where you have a sudden influx and a sudden growth in the number of registrations that participate, then you're still only going to pay the amount that you had in the previous year. So my best example is I had a festival recently that had only about 350 registrations in 2023. I'm using these numbers as kind of my helper here. But a festival had 350 registrations in 2023. If we had used this system, they would have been paying based off of 350 registrations. But in 2024, they had nearly 500. That's a pretty big jump for the size of festival that they are. It wouldn't change their subscription rate. that they would still be paying based off of the previous year. And so trying to also maintain the predictability for your subscription rates. That was one of the nice things about the flat rate, is you always knew what it was going to be. Here, you'll still be able to easily predict what your subscription rate is going to be, because you'll know it based on the previous year's registration numbers. So again, I said I was going to ease into it. So we're still going to kind of keep people a little bit comfortable around that $600 rate. So if you have 600 registrations or less in 2024, then that base $100 access fee, $100 for every 100 registrations, that's going to be how your subscription rate is calculated. So as an example, if you had 350 registrations in 2024, which you can find out through your statistics screens, then your subscription rate will be $100 for groups of 100 registrations. So that'll be 400 registrations plus the $100 access fee. For some festivals, that means that's going to be subscription rate reduction. And the next thing that we have is we're going to also kind of have a little bit of a mini cap throughout this year as well. So if you have between 600 and 900 registrations, which there are a handful of our festivals who have that many, we're going to actually make it a $600 flat rate to kind of keep it a little bit closer to what you have been used to and try to keep that predictability for you going forward. We'll still add the access fee this year as well. So say you had 750 registrations in 2024, it'll be a $600 flat rate and then a $100 access fee on top of it, totaling $700. Now, if you have over 900 registrations, you're one of my larger festivals, then we are going to get it's going to be a little bit more for you. You were expecting it to be 900 because you're going to be moving to Crescendo this year. We're making it $1,000 instead and waiving the access fee at that point. So if you had 1,150 registrations in 2024, your 2025 subscription rate will be $1,000. Yes, that is an increase, but we hope that the other things that we're building in will also help you save some money, time, and sometimes a little bit of anxiety when it comes to organizing a festival as well. So we're trying to make things easier for you, but also be reasonable with our rates. And same thing goes for the extremely large festivals that we have, 1,550 registrations as an example. It's not the largest festival we have, but with 1,550 registrations, your subscription rate will still have that access fee waived and a $1,000 flat rate. Fast forward to 2026, and now it's going to be even more simplified and easier to understand. It's simply going to be $100 per 100 registrations with a $100 access fee, but once you hit $1,000, that access fee is waived, and that you will only go to a maximum total of $1,200. And so again, trying to keep things equitable as best as we possibly can. So again, if in 2025 you end up having 350 registrations, it'll still be a $500 subscription rate. If you had 750 registrations, well, that's going to be 800's worth, and then the $100 access fee, so you'd be paying 900. If you have over 1,000 registrations, that means you're going to have the access fee waived. And if you have over 1,200 registrations, it's just going to be 1,200. Even if you end up with 3,200 registrations, it's still only going to be $1,200 when you get to that spot in 2026. That's a good distance out, gives you a chance to adjust your budget as you need to. And then we get into 2027, where we get to the final end of things, where we're going to get to a maximum of $1,500 instead of the maximum of $1,200. And again, 2027's pricing is going to be based on 2026 registrations. One of the things we're hoping that you recognize as you do this, if you do have to do some budget adjustments, we hope you recognize that we try to get it based on the registration so that it's actually really easy for you to make those budget adjustments if you need to, such as perhaps simply increasing your registration fees by a single dollar. That's all that we're trying to aim towards, is that the most you ever have to change. Some of you might not even feel you need to change, which would be fantastic. That's what we're hoping for. But if you feel the need to change, it will be the maximum of $1, and your users will probably quite happily accept that as the inflation rate, as opposed to the inflation rate that bread has seen recently. But that's what we're going to go for, and that's our move forward for our pricing structure, to be equitable, and to make sure that we are compensated for the amount of effort and work that we're putting in, and to make sure that things are a little bit more comfortable for you to operate the festival as well. That brings this lovely presentation of mine to a conclusion. The state of the system has now been closed, as it were, but I do want to welcome any questions you have or comments or feedback. As always, the best place to do that is in your support tickets, so I ask that's where you put it, because that's where everything is best kept track of. Anything you put in there with the word wish list, I always come back to and make sure that I develop it in some way, shape, or form to the best of my ability, wherever that's possible. So all of your feedback is always listened to. In fact, it's your feedback that has also given us direction on some of these new features and some of the refinements that we're doing for the 2025 festival season. Again, more importantly, I need to make sure I say thank you. I really have no way of continually expressing this to you because the way I want to, because I'm a hugger. I like to hug people, and if I could reach through this screen and hug every single one of you for the hard work that you go through every year to make fantastic music education experiences happen for your young and developing musicians, I would totally reach right through the screen and give you that great big old bear hug. I so appreciate you guys and what you do for developing your community through music education. It is invaluable. My students get so much out of it, and actually my students have come to many of your festivals or participated online in many of your festivals. You're invaluable human beings. I appreciate you so much, and I thank you for letting me be a part of your journey through Music Festival Suite. At that point, again, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, please send them to me in a support ticket. In the meantime, have a great summer. Take care of each other, love each other, and I'll see you next time I'm online with you. Peace.